is Candice Sanderson, and I am from Naples, Florida. My life changed in August 2013. During an early morning commute, I began receiving messages from the non-physical realms of energy, dimensions that many refer to as spirit. Now, until that day, I had lived my life as a psychologist, trusting only what my physical senses could measure. But here I was, confronted with something so big and so huge that it has forever changed me. I literally transformed from psychologist to psychic and from skeptic to believer during that 10-minute drive to work. These messages continue today. I've written 2 books about my experiences. One, you'll see behind me, The Reluctant Messenger. That was published in 2018. And in 2020, I published The Reluctant Messenger Returns. This first book has a subtitle that says, An Ordinary Person's Extraordinary Journey into the Unknown. And that really says it all. If this could happen to me, it could happen to anyone. The subtitle to the second book, The Reluctant Messenger Returns, is An Unexpected Adventure into the Angelic Realm. This book focuses on the messages and the experiences that I've had involving angels, the life review, and even the energy process as we transition. So it covers topics like that. Now, both books have reached the #1 bestseller on Amazon, and I've sold thousands across the globe. They have won awards in international book contests. And you know what? That's great, but that's not what's most important. What's most important are those experiences behind the books. If you want to check out samples of the book, you can go to my website at CandiceSanderson.com. But you might ask, and I've had people ask, how did you learn this? Where did you get your training wheels? Well, my training wheels to explore these unknown territories came from Monroe Institute. The books and speaking engagements like this are my way. I mean, it's only a small way though. Bob Monroe used to say, get it out there. Let others know about this awakening of consciousness that's spreading across our planet. And so that's what I've tried to do through my books and public speaking and my YouTube channels and other social media. I do this to let people know that we are more than our physical bodies. And there is a whole universe out there, mostly unexplored, and it's just waiting for us to discover. Now, Parvin asked me, what should we call the name of my talk? She said, oh, I don't know, maybe life after death, life after life. And I thought, you know, I really like the title, Life After Death and More, because there is more after death, much more. And we can explore those realms now. We don't have to wait until our final transition. I started truly exploring the more after I attended Lifeline at Monroe Institute. But first, let me tell you how I learned about Monroe. Parvin and I have been involved with the LCN, Local Chapter Network, since its inception back in 2009. And I had the honor of being on the first LCN Leadership Council when we built this network of local chapters across the globe. Where we're meeting now, this is Parvin's chapter, and this chapter is part of that network. And now in 2021, I am just thrilled that this network of local chapters continues to thrive. Parvin and I have attended programs together. We've been to LCN working retreats. We often meet, as we did this week. Richard was with us too, at the weekly online chapter leader forum. The LCN, which by the way, will undergo a name change in the future. They're going to take away the chapter in the title. I don't know what it's going to be called, but the LCN has been responsible for establishing these chapters that are all over the planet now. But these meetings, these chapters, they have always been my go-to place for me. It's where I can go and hang my hat. I can sit in a comfortable chair and just chat, meet new friends. But let's not forget experiencing that magic that comes with listening to these beautiful sound-based frequencies. Whether it's the original Hemisync, which we listened to, and I loved that one, hearing Bob Monroe voice that. I love that selection you chose. Or whether it's the remodeled Monroe Sound Science, this is where the frequencies take us beyond the confines of our physical bodies. Even if it's just for a few minutes, we step outside of the worries and bothers of everyday living, and we escape. We drop into those breathtaking frequencies and vibrations of energy, of the non-physical. And if you've been here before, you know what I'm referring to. And for those that are new to this sound-based technology, oh, you're in for a treat. Just like those sounds that we heard in the opening meditation, carry you to a new space. It's wonderful. I began my first book, The Reluctant Messenger, with one of my very favorite quotes. It's from Nikola Tesla. He said, "If you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration." Another equally important quote for me is from Bob Monroe. If you attend a program on campus, you'll recognize it. It's the first line in his affirmation that starts many of the exercises, but it starts with, "I am more than my physical body." I used to gloss over that phrase, but the more I experience Monroe Sound Science, the more profound that one statement becomes. It's the basis of all of Monroe's research and work. To truly know that we are more than these physical frames that we inhabit. I first heard of Bob Monroe and his institute through a casual conversation that I actually overheard. I wasn't even part of it, but I took a mental note and thought, I've got to be there. It piqued my interest, and I dreamed of going to the institute for years until I finally got there. I finally registered for Gateway Voyage in 2008, and I would be attending that next summer, 2009, and I just couldn't wait. I was so excited. Gateway Voyage, for the new people, that is Monroe Institute's flagship program. A lot of times it serves as a prerequisite for many of the other programs, because in Gateway, we're introduced to Bob Monroe's famous focus levels, which are different states of awareness, states of consciousness. So I had registered, but not yet attended, when Paul Rademacher, the executive director of Monroe, started the local chapter network. And I jumped at the chance, and I started the LCN's first official local chapter. I've attended about 20 programs on campus, but I will always lag behind Parvin. She is my gold standard. She wins the award for attending the most programs. It seems like she's there every time the door opens. As I attend local chapter meetings, programs on campus, or even when I listen to these frequencies in the comfort of my own home, I started noticing a pattern, a change in me. I knew something was different, but I really couldn't pinpoint it. I didn't know exactly what it was. Now, before I go much farther into my experiences with Monroe Institute, I need to share with you the, quote, official Monroe disclaimer. These are my opinions and not representative of the Monroe Institute. And being on the local chapter network's leadership council, I know how important it is to follow the rules. So that's the disclaimer. I understand why they need it. But now let me give you the Candice Sanderson disclaimer. Although these are my experiences, I can name dozens of others, including Parvin, who have had equally profound experiences at Monroe or even just with their sound-based frequencies. Over time, I realized there was this cumulative effect listening to these beautiful frequencies, no matter where it was, at home, campus, or in a chapter meeting. But every time I listened, these magical sounds would carry me away from this material world that I lived in, beyond this world that I had defined by my physical senses. You see, as a psychologist, I had learned to trust only the material realm of matter. If I couldn't measure something with my senses, it didn't exist, at least not in my universe. Anything existing outside of the world of physicality was based on wishful thinking, or, as my training as a psychologist had taught me to believe, pathology. I was changing by steady increments, but little did I know, I was headed toward an abyss. A void so deep and wide that it would swallow me completely, catapulting me into the rubble of what had been my belief system. But I, the real me, would emerge, climbing from the debris to enter a brave new world. And what was this abyss that changed my life forever? Lifeline. It happened in late July 2013 when I attended a Monroe program called Lifeline. Lifeline, where the frequencies take you to a place where you can assist newcomers, which were souls who have recently passed. We were there to help them complete their final journey on Earth, to deliver them to what Monroe refers to as the park, or Focus 27. You know, I cannot think of a more selfless service than to help someone with their final transition. But I didn't go to the program for that. I did it because Lifeline was a prerequisite for another program. But you know, that might have been key to what happened. I did not enter the program with expectations. I didn't have any desire for retrieval work. What was retrieval anyway? Were we retrieving parts of ourselves? Were we really retrieving souls of people, real people who had passed away? I will never forget that first exercise. I'm in my check unit. Oh, Bob Monroe loved using acronyms. CHEC, C-H-E-C. That stands for Controlled Holistic Environmental Chamber. Check units are like sleeping berths on a train. They're usually single-size mattresses, and they're on platforms that are tucked inside a wall. When you close the heavy curtains, it is completely dark. Now, there's lights too if you want them, but I prefer the darkness. So we were all a little nervous about trying this out. Would it really work? But because I didn't really care, my only expectations were to sit back and enjoy the ride. So waiting for that first exercise to begin, I'm resting comfortably in my check unit. I've got my headphones on. It's nice and dark. The exercise starts and the voice over my headphones tells me to find someone who needs help with their transition. But nothing happened. That didn't surprise me. You see, back then, although I had attended several programs at Monroe, and I was growing to absolutely love this consciousness exploration, I wasn't very good at it. Other people were, not me. But for reasons I can't explain, I reached outside of my unit and fumbled for my phone. I brought it to me, opened up my recording app, and hit record. Out of the blue, I spoke a man's first and last names, followed by a city and state, a place I've never been before. I've never even traveled to that state. Next came the word Jackson. I didn't know what that name was, but for whatever reason, I knew it was not a family name. I had no idea what was going on, but I just went with it. And I thought in the back of my mind, isn't it funny how your mind just invents things, makes things up? When the exercise ended, we gathered to debrief our findings. My phone was already in my hand, so I Googled the man's name, and almost as an afterthought, I typed the word obituary in the search bar. Oh my gosh, within seconds, there was his death notice. I could not believe it. Not only his first and last names, but his location, city and state. And a detail that I did not discover until years later when I was researching him to include this story in my first book. He had passed exactly 3 months before, to the day of the retrieval. For some reason, learning that this was the 3rd month anniversary of his death added an element of suspense and awe. It made me feel it was real, it was authentic. It gave me cold chills. Then I saw that name Jackson. I was right. It was not a family name. It was his place of business. Then something else from that online death notice jumped out at me. This was new information, and it was more important than anything that I had received. This man, this beloved man, was a psychologist. A psychologist. Suddenly, it made perfect sense. This new information was the glue that solidified all the other pieces of the puzzle. It brought the full picture into view. We both shared the energy of psychologist. That is why we connected. On a level that I was not prepared to understand at the time, I realized that we shared the same energy frequency, and that had made our connection possible. After this first exercise, which blew my mind, I retrieved many others, and Google searches confirmed the details that shocked me with how easily the information came. I was learning there was life after life. I had first, middle, and last names of many people. That equals for us psychologists what we love: verification, confirmation, authentication. That's what we love. And believe me when I say I was loving it. Lifeline changed me from believer to knower. But I didn't realize it at the time. What I thought I'd known about life actually became murky, very unclear. I began to realize how much I did not know about life. As the underpinnings of my life shifted, I emerged from the wreckage of what had been my belief system. I was changed, transformed. I had found life after lifelines. But this wasn't in real time. I didn't know it until a couple weeks later as I drove to work early one morning. And that's when it happened. As all of my experiences with Monroe's sound-based frequencies over the years peaked. Yes, just a couple weeks after Lifeline, on an early morning commute, I began to channel messages from the non-physical. I began to share messages of life after death from the other side. I began to commune with angels and guides. I learned about time and how it works. I traveled through the cosmos, zooming past galaxies unknown. I visited the realms of light where I met with ascended masters. This and so much more. I learned life continues, and there is definitely more life after death. There is so much more. But let's backtrack a little. Let me share with you another Monroe experience. It's related to my opening at Lifeline, but I did not even realize that until years after it had occurred. In November 2012, 8 months before I attended Lifeline, I had a simple bilateral thyroidectomy. It turned out not to be so simple after all. As they removed my thyroid, my right vocal cord was accidentally paralyzed. I could no longer speak above a whisper. Being a psychologist, I had to have my voice. It was my lifeline to my work. So I had to wear a microphone that was connected to a voice box that amplified my whispers. But the paralysis of my vocal cord didn't affect just my ability to speak and talk. I had trouble breathing. I had trouble swallowing. If I tried to drink thin liquids like water, I would aspirate and start choking. There have been so many times that I would be in a classroom or the cafeteria or even in a restaurant back in the days when we would go out to restaurants. When this would happen, I would choke in dead silence, would like slip through the room in the wake of my choking, and all eyes just turned on me. I still remember the looks on their faces. I wasn't the only one scared. But let's fast forward to February 2013. 2 critical things happened that month. First of all, it had been over 3 months and I still had a paralyzed vocal cord. My surgeon sent me to a specialist who scoped my throat with a small video camera that felt like it was the size of a house. He snaked that camera up my nose to the back of my throat and then down my trachea to view my vocal cords. If that sounds uncomfortable, it was. Truly it was. The reason I'm sharing this with you, now my medical condition is documented, complete with a video scan to prove the paralysis. I was supposed to return the next week to start the pre-surgical process. I didn't go. The second critical event that happened, it was later that same week, and I flew from my home in Naples, Florida, to Charlottesville, Virginia, to attend an LCN working retreat at Monroe's home campus. As part of the LCN Leadership Council, I had a speaking role, but it was awkward. Standing at the podium in front of about 50 people, there were wires all over the place. These microphones were a mess. I had one for the room, and then I had to have my personal mic, and then we had a mic for the online streaming. So while everyone's arranging these mics and making sure there was none of that screeching feedback when the mics would get too close together, I took that as an opportunity to tell the participants about my paralyzed vocal cord. You know, I'd been to enough programs at Monroe, and I knew that many people who go to Monroe are natural healers. So while they are wiring me for sound, I announced that I welcomed any and all healing energy. That evening, the group held a healing session for me. It was wonderful. It felt great. But afterwards, I still didn't have my voice. But I know that healing sometimes takes, maybe not sometimes, often takes a different form than what you expect. The retreat continued the next morning, and at the end of the last day of the conference, we had a treat planned for the on-campus people attending. Bob Holbrook, the mastermind behind Monroe Sound Science, had asked if our group would beta test some of the new technology he was working on. Everyone jumped at the chance to do that. So we returned to our check units to listen to 3 short selections, and we each had forms to record our experiences. I will never forget what happened on the second selection. Buddha came to me. He said, "Be silent for 24 hours and you will be healed." I didn't know what to think. I grew up in Western Kentucky as a Southern Baptist. Buddha wasn't on my radar, but that's one reason why I know I didn't make this up. If I had invented this, I would have chosen someone from my Christian heritage to give me this message. After we listened to the selections, everyone reconvened to debrief. And I had taken this vow to remain silent. I was not going to break that promise. So I scribbled my notes and handed it to my friend sitting next to me, and she read it to the group. That night, everyone's in the Fox Den and we're relaxing, enjoying our last evening together. And cell phones started ching, 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 chiming one after the other across the room. Everyone was getting text notifications from the airlines. Guess what? A snowstorm was blowing through the area and all early morning flights were canceled. We had to reschedule our flights home. Delayed by 7 or more hours, I finally flew out the next afternoon. I made it home, and that evening, when that 24-hour window passed, I tried out my voice. After 3 months of whispers, my voice had returned. It was back, full volume. Was it the sound-based technology that we were testing at the retreat? Was it the healing group from 2 days before? Was it Buddha? Was it all of the above? All I know is that this was a medical miracle, a documented medical miracle, and it occurred at Monroe Institute. I had a new lease on life. I embraced my new life after life. Now, let me share another quick aside story. I went through my 2009 Gateway Voyage notes a few weeks ago, and imagine my surprise when I discovered that Buddha had also made an appearance at Gateway. During an exercise in my check unit, I saw him sitting in that lotus position that I'm sure you've seen before. He didn't say anything, he just floated in and out of my awareness. I'm a real good note taker, so I documented all of this. But at the time, back in 2009, that experience really didn't have any significance for me. It only lasted about 5 seconds. In fact, I didn't even remember it. So 4 years later, during the LCN retreat, I had no memory of Buddha's previous experience at Gateway. So now, this year, 2021, 12 years after, I discovered, I guess that should be rediscovered, Buddha's initial visit. When I realized that I had seen Buddha twice, and both times at Monroe, cold chills racked my body from head to toe. And it suggests that he holds much more significance than I had known to both me and to my healing. Now, talking about cold chills, do you ever get those? There's a lot of names for them, goosebumps, cold chills, but we do get them when we're cold. When temperatures drop, our skin reacts by producing these chill bumps. It's our body's way of attempting to raise our internal temperature, and you start to shiver, and that helps keep you warm. We know this, we understand this. But think about the chills that you get when you are not exposed to cold or when you're not feverish. What is that? They have always been a sign for me to pay attention to whatever is happening at the moment. Throughout the years of conversing with the messengers, they've talked to me about using senses in a different way, in a non-conventional manner. They've even referred to this as using our non-senses. My experiences at Monroe Institute have taught me how to do precisely that. It's learning to expand your awareness, expand your senses beyond their typical applications, like getting cold chills is a heads up that something that our other senses can't measure, something is about to happen. It's a nudge for me to pay attention. It's a wink from our guides or our angels. It's letting us know that we're on the right path. It's an aha moment. Learning how Buddha had been there for me before was such a moment. There's actually another backstory, but I'm not going to go into that today. It's detailed in my second book, The Reluctant Messenger Returns. But let me just say that I later discovered that I was being groomed to be a voice for the non-physical. And that was the reason behind my paralyzed vocal cord and the spontaneous healing. The next step, though, once I was healed, was to have practice. And Lifeline provided that training. Lifeline, where the programs opened the doors for us, for the participants, to know that we truly are more than our physical bodies. Lifeline, where I learned there is life after death. Lifeline, where I learned there is life after life. There is more life than what we experience on earth. Our lives on earth are just the beginning. So thank you, Parvin. And I am going to go ahead and stop the recording. So if people have questions, they won't have to have this recorded.